Hey, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. It's Dave. It's the end of the month, the end of February 2025 when I'm recording this. I have my coffee. Ooh, yeah, my coffee. And I just wanted to jump on and say thanks. Recently, we went over the 500 episode mark. Woohoo! 500 episodes of Living the Next Chapter. And I'm excited. That's in a 3-year span, everyone. So I wanted to share... Because when I mention this to people, they're like, okay, yeah, 500 episodes. I wanted to kind of give you some perspective on what 500 episodes really means from a podcaster's point of view. I know you're a listener of podcasts, and I truly appreciate you and love you being here. But I want to give you some context, just so you understand kind of what's going on here for Living the Next Chapter and the amazing guests that we have on the show. So here's some stats about podcasting, okay? And I know you're like, oh my gosh, boring stats. I'll go through them quick, but I want to give you some context, okay? So on average, it takes 2 years and about 100 episodes released before a podcaster can see any results for their show. 2 years, 100 episodes. So roughly, 50, 52 episodes a year, one a week. For 2 years before you see any results at all, like an audience growing, making some money with your podcast through my Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. There's a link in the show notes. It takes about 2 years and about 100 episodes before you'll see anything around your podcast gaining any momentum at all. 2 years, 100 episodes, okay? Unfortunately, 95% of people quit before reaching 2 years and 100 episodes. According to stats over at podmatch.com/report, link in the show notes, approximately 362 podcasters quit every single day. So as of February 2025, the likelihood of success as a podcaster is like 5% chance that a podcast is going to stick around to any significant results. 5%, 95% of podcasters just give up, pack it up, and shut down the show. Or just walk away. Like the car's running in the parking lot and there's nobody in it. The show just stops. So I want to celebrate us, you and me, and all these amazing authors on this podcast, that we've got to 500 episodes in 3 years. 500 episodes in 3 years. That's amazing. And it hasn't stopped. I'm getting emails from amazing authors from around the world. Now, because we have 500 episodes, I'm getting emails from some amazing, amazing guests that have, on top of who's already been here, there are more people coming to me every day because they want to talk to you. They want to be a part of this community. They want to be on this show and reach you as a listener. I think we have something pretty special here on the podcast. I'm biased because I'm the host of the show, obviously. But I think we have something special here. I want to tell you a little bit of the things that I tell authors before they come on the show. What I want to tell them about you as a listener. Everybody that comes on, I do a pre-chat with every guest. Okay, so what does that mean? I meet my guest ahead of time. We talk through the show. We meet each other. We leave and come back on a different day and record. So I talk to my guest twice. So in over 500 episodes, I've spoken to people over 1,000 times then. Just double it. Why do I do that? Because I want to give you the best communication and the best conversation possible. So that's kind of why I do that. I want you to have a great experience on this show as a listener, as I would want. And I tell my guests three things. First, I want them to think of you in the room. When we get down to record, it's not just me and the guest on Zoom recording an episode together. There's one other person that we can't see, and it's you. The one you listening right now. I want them to picture you in the room, and I ask them, I implore them to speak to you directly. So if we're talking about narcissism, if we're talking about business design, if we're talking about grief, I want them to talk to you who are dealing with these things in real time. And here's an author that didn't just write a book, but they care about the subject. They care about you. And I want them to talk to you as if you're in the room. That's the first thing I ask everybody to do. Second is I ask them to talk to my audience, which consists of, first, authors. And if you'll notice when we listen to the episodes, I purposely kind of lead off the conversation with supporting a fellow author. So I'm going to ask my guest about their author journey. I'm going to ask them, what have they learned? How have they grown? What kind of tools have they used? What advice would they give to a fellow author just starting out? I want you as an author, irregardless of if you're into the topic of the book or the author themselves, I want to honor you at the beginning. So it's kind of like I would suggest if you're an author that you listen to the first 5 minutes of every episode, because I am purposely asking this guest as an author to speak to you. Again, if it's a children's book and you're not into children's books, I'm asking this author to inspire you when they come on the show. Every interview starts with an author tip to share with a fellow author. So if you have only listened to a few episodes because you're kind of picking the episodes of the genre that you like to read, so you love historical fiction, okay, then I'm inviting you to go back over 500 episodes and listen to the first 5 minutes, roughly, of each episode. If the topic's not interesting to you as far as what the author's writing about, I'm fine with you not listening to the whole thing. But if you listen to the first 5 minutes, you're going to pick up author tips and inspiration for you as an author to get out of your head, to get past those blocks that you have as an author, and to write your story. So I'm doing that for you on purpose. So anytime that you're sitting at your desk, you're sitting in front of a blinking cursor on your screen or a blank piece of paper and a pencil in your hand, and you're like, I am stuck, go to Living the Next Chapter on your player, on your app. Make sure you subscribe because you'll get every episode just comes to you. You don't have to think about it. So if you're Spotify, Apple, Audible, whatever, make sure you follow the show, subscribe to the show. That way you know when new episodes come out. And then just pick any episode. I don't care what it's about, who the author is, and hit play. Listen to the first 5 minutes. Be inspired by a story from a fellow author who loves and cares about you, a comrade as an author, and then carry on with your day. But pick up a little piece of inspiration. There's over 500 pieces of inspiration currently that are available right now for you to inspire you to keep doing the thing you love to do. So there you go. That's the first thing I ask every guest. And if you haven't noticed, I want you to go back and listen to like last episode, the one before this, and see if you pick up on it. I'm always leading my guest to talk to you if you're an author. That's the first thing I ask from them. Okay. Also, the other thing is then I tell them, listen, I want to transition our conversation from talking to the authors, because they may or they may not be your ideal audience who would actually buy your book. So I'd say 10% of our conversation at the beginning of the episode is geared towards the authors. 90% of our conversation after that first 10% is focused on you, the reader. Because you, like me, may never write a book. Wait, Dave, you've never written a book? Yeah, I've never written a book. 500 episodes, I've never done it. I'm interested, I'm curious, but I've never done it. So I'm like you. I've never done this before. I want to spend 90% of our conversation talking to the reader. So whether it's a book that just takes you away from life and gives you a break from the monotony of what you're doing and you need an escape and you want to fall in love with a great book, then that's awesome. That's what we're going to talk about. If it's something that helps you with grief or pain or living a healthier life, mental health, finances, relationships, whatever the topic of the book is, we don't just talk about the book and make it a gigantic commercial. We get into the topic of what the author has written about so that we go even deeper. And one of the coolest things that have been happening over the last 500 episodes. I got to tell you something that happens when we're done recording. It's interesting. We hit stop, and I've had this happen more often than not, that my guest will look straight into the camera. We're not recording anymore. And the guest will say, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "What? Why are you asking me that?" They're like, "You've asked me questions that nobody has ever thought to ask or has ever asked me on a podcast or in an interview. I do this for a living. I interview people. I do this. I'm a reporter. I'm a journalist. I'm a writer. And who trained you how to do this?" And I'm like, I have no training at all. I'm just a guy in his basement doing this all by himself with no team. I do it all, and I do it on my days off. And they just look at me with a slight tilt to their head to the left, and they just say, "This is the most interesting interview I have ever had." I've had authors tell me off camera that based on our conversation, they now know the next book they're going to write. Like they were completely in the conversation. It was like a light bulb went off for them, and they're like, "I now know what I'm going to write next, just because I came on Dave's show." I've had authors weep on the show. I have had authors tell me that I've quoted out of their book and I haven't even read it. Side note, 500 episodes, I think I've read maybe 10 of the books that have come to me as guests on the show. 10, maybe. And you're like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not listening to this podcast. The host doesn't even read the books. Well, to read 500 books in 3 years and be a podcaster and have a job and have 8 other podcasts that I do on top of this, and be a dad and be a husband and be a pet owner and shovel the snow, that's impossible. I don't read every book. There you go. I've said it out loud. And if you're a potential guest coming on the show and you're like, "How dare he not read my book?" Why do I not read the book? Very simple. I want to discover my guest in real time. I want to have a moment where I go as the host, as a representation of you, the listener, to go, "Wait a minute, you did what? Oh, wait, I want to talk about that. How did that happen? How did you get there? So you did what?" These are kind of the questions I'm bringing up in real time because I don't know the answer to these. Even though we've pre-chatted, we've already talked, and then we're coming back to record, I don't know the answer to these questions. And I want you as a listener to feel in the moment that you're here with me. And that's the feedback I've had from you, is the moment I had a question for the guest, Dave asked the question. It's like you're in my head. And I've recorded this episode 3 months ago. There is no way that I know that you had the question I was going to ask. So I know that you know that you know that I know that I know that you know, I think, that I'm just asking and being a representation of you in the conversation. I want to discover my guest in real time. So yes, I'm going to do research. I'm going to read reviews. I'm going to get the general idea of the book. But have I read every book? Absolutely not. Can I guarantee I will in the future? No. And that's the beauty of the show. I want to represent you. You're listening. You don't know this author. Possibly you've never heard of them. You've never heard of their book. And this is your first time hearing their voice and hearing them tell the story of their book. I want you to experience what I'm experiencing when I hit record. And that's why I do this. So I want my guest to think of you when they come on the show. I want them to talk to authors in the first 5 minutes and encourage a fellow author, even if the author's not interested in the subject matter of their book. I want every author to walk away inspired. I want this show to be your inspiration to keep writing. And here's 500 other authors who would love to talk to you about your journey and encourage you to move forward, because they were exactly where you were today. And they have advice and knowledge that I don't have, because I haven't done this. They have the knowledge, the experience, and the results that you're looking for. So every single episode of 500 episodes is an author pouring into you. And that I do that on purpose. Like I said, come for the first 5 minutes, and if you want to leave, great. Grab what you can, be inspired, and go. I'm happy with that, because you got something out of this podcast, no matter what the topic is, no matter what the author has written about. We're here to help you. I want more authors to write more stories. A, because I need more guests. B, because the world needs your voice. And I don't want you to feel like you're alone in this world as an author. And here's a bunch of new friends that you have that you can reach out to. That's the bonus of this. Not only do you get to hear an author come on the show and talk about their journey, you also have their contact information. You have their email, you have their website, you have their social media handle. You can say, hey, I'm an author. I live in X city, country, province, state, and I heard you on Dave's show. You said that I could reach out to you. And I would love to have a conversation, maybe a virtual coffee, as I have my coffee here with me right now. It's getting cold. I just want to sit down with you and talk about your journey as an author. I want to talk about you, and I loved what you talked about on Dave's show. And can we just chat? Because you said I could reach out, and I want to make sure that's still okay. I ask my authors, can people reach out to you? Sure. Yeah, anytime. I'd love to talk to anybody that listens to your show. You are not alone as an author in this world. So when you have a question about publishing, you have a question about how to get cover design, you have a question about editing, you have a question about promotion, you have a question about working with people in the publishing space, you have not only information firsthand from an author like you who's further down the road, you also have a connection with an author that's open to you anytime. You are not alone in this. And that's why I do my show, to help you. So again, you're an author, you come to Living the Next Chapter, you press play on any episode, 500 plus episodes for you to choose from. Go back. Go back, way back to the beginning, episode 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 100, 500. There's 500 episodes for you to pick from. There is no more excuses about not being inspired and you feel alone. This show alone is going to give you 2 years almost of content to listen to every single day. So start your day, every day, with a piece of inspiration before you sit down to write. Hit Living the Next Chapter, randomize it, pick any episode you want, and start your day with 5 minutes or so at the beginning of the episode to inspire you to write today. That's a gift for you, and it doesn't cost you a penny. Just subscribe to the show. Follow the show. You can even find us on YouTube. Again, subscribe and follow over there. Wherever you want to listen to the show, it's there for you. I want to make it easy. And again, livingthenextchapter.com. And then again, this show is dual purpose for readers. Like me, you have never written a book, but you just love reading. You love hearing the story behind the book. We had an author on, and I'll share this before we wrap up. We had an author on who wrote the first 3 chapters of her book. And then at the end of chapter 3, her life took a change. And for 10 years, she stepped away from her book. She didn't write a word around the book. For 10 years. Came back 10 years later and wrote chapter 4. It was kind of a passing comment in the moment on the show. And I'm like, wait, hang on. So you're telling me when I buy your book and I turn the page from chapter 3 to chapter 4, that's a 10-year page turn. You're a totally different person 10 years after that page turn. Like, you're a totally different writer. The world's different. You're different. Let's talk about that page turn. And I want to buy the book just for the page turn. I want to do it. I want to go, that's 10 years of somebody's life. Would you know that from any book on a library shelf? No. You would have no idea that chapter 3 was written 10 years before chapter 4. You'd have no clue, right? But we get to that kind of stories in this podcast so that when you read a book, you're like, oh, I get it. And my hope for this podcast is not only, I don't want you to be selfish with the content. I don't want you to just come here for yourself. I want you to come and listen to these stories and listen to these authors for the people you know in your life. There is somebody in your life that you know would benefit from the topic, the book, the author, the story. There's something in our conversation that you're like, I think Frank in accounting would love this. Or my Aunt Marge, oh, she would love this author so much. I want you to listen to the podcast through the lens of your community. Because then you can think about not only yourself as a reader, but the people in your life that you care about. There's one thing that I know about podcasting, and I teach podcasting. I have a show called the How to Podcast series, and I teach people how to be a host and also how to be a guest. Side note, if you want to be a guest as an author on a podcast and you're not sure how to do it, you can reach out to me anytime. I'd love to talk you through it and help you get on shows. It's free. I'm not going to charge you anything. It's free. Just reach out to me through my website. I'd love to have a conversation with you, build up your confidence, and then give you opportunities to come on this show at least. Let's get you going. But as I work on this, word of mouth marketing is simply you telling other people about something you enjoy. Think about the last Netflix show that you watched, the last Amazon Prime, the last movie, the last TV show on traditional TV, the last restaurant, the last fill in the blank. When you tell somebody you know and love something that you think they would like, they're more apt to act on it because of where the information's coming from. It's not a gigantic commercial. Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. It's not that. It's, hey, to your husband, your wife, your partner, your children, your relative, your coworker, I think you're really going to like this. I know this about you. I heard this and I thought of you. You should go listen. You should go check this out. You simply doing that act, helps my podcast grow, and I'm totally thankful and grateful for that, but also helps the author sell more books. Because you shared it with somebody you know and love. That recommendation carries more weight than any advertisement that I could ever do on this podcast. So my thanks to you for sharing the show, for being here for over 500 episodes, and for being part of the community at livingthenextchapter.com. To my 500 friends who have been on this show as guests, as authors, as people who work with authors. Thank you to you. I raise my coffee cup to you, and thank you for being on the show, for pouring into our audience, and for showing up for the people in this world who are telling great stories and living their next chapter, one chapter at a time. So my question for you as we go, and I always like to ask my guests this either in the pre-chat or on the interview itself. My question to you, whether you're an author or not, is how are you living your next chapter? What are you doing to be a success? Your next chapter matters, and I'm so grateful you're here. I hope you find inspiration, and I'm asking you to share the show with one person, please. And again, go back and listen to some older episodes, and we got some great stuff coming up in the future for the show I'm really excited about. Always, you can find everything up to date and new at livingthenextchapter.com. Thanks again for being here, for listening to the show. Truly appreciate you. livingthenextchapter.com, as we always mention, is where you can find everything to do with the show. And one thing that we're going to be doing coming up really, really, really soon is we're going to be creating a Living the Next Chapter online magazine. Oh. If you want to see what it kind of looks like in a different format, you can go to canadianpodcaster.com and you'll see I've made a newsletter online magazine for podcasters in Canada. I know you're not probably in Canada, but you could look at it. But we're creating something similar. We're going to group together our authors. We have 500 episodes. How are you going to find your next favorite author? We're going to group them together in like genres of writing. children's books, historical fiction. We're going to make these little online magazines, and they'll be available to you for free. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com. Watch, because they'll be showing up there very, very soon. And I can't wait for you to check them out. Okay? Go check out livingthenextchapter.com and look for our new online magazine coming soon to the internet near you. Thank you for listening. Take care.